Have you ever trusted someone who ended up betraying you in the worst possible way? Imagine being publicly humiliated by someone you love, only to discover that everything they flaunted as theirs was actually yours. This is the story of Michael, a man who turned betrayal and shame into an unforgettable lesson of resilience and justice. Stay with me until the end, because what starts as public humiliation transforms into a comeback so powerful you won't believe it. So, are you ready to find out how he turned it all around? Michael had always believed in love, the kind that made you feel invincible, like you could conquer the world with someone by your side. But life has a funny way of teaching lessons, doesn't it? One evening, while scrolling through his phone, he stumbled upon messages that shattered his trust. Jessica, his girlfriend, was seeing Ethan behind his back. It wasn't just the betrayal that stung, it was the audacity. She flaunted their relationship in public, laughing at Michael's supposed lack of wealth while basking in the glory of luxury she hadn't earned. Oh, how quickly people forget where their comforts come from. The humiliation hit its peak at a party where Jessica, with Ethan by her side, mocked Michael openly. She painted him as a struggling nobody while leaning on the hood of a Rolls-Royce, his Rolls-Royce. The irony was almost poetic. Michael stood there quietly, taking it all in. Sometimes silence is louder than words, and boy, was he planning to make some noise when the time was right. Life has a way of showing you who's really in your corner when the chips are down. But here's the thing about betrayal, it doesn't just hurt. It teaches. Michael realized that people often mistake kindness for weakness and generosity for naivety. Jessica had underestimated him, thinking she could humiliate him without consequence. Little did she know that the very car she used to impress others was his. And isn't it funny how life works? The same stage where you're mocked can become the platform for your greatest comeback. Michael couldn't help but smirk when he pieced it all together. The Rolls-Royce that Jessica and Ethan paraded around in as a symbol of their success was, in fact, his. It wasn't just any car, it was a masterpiece of engineering, worth millions, and a testament to years of hard work. Yet, here they were, cluelessly flaunting it as if they had earned it. He decided to keep this revelation to himself for now. Sometimes the best way to deal with arrogance is to let it dig its own grave. He began observing them from a distance, watching how they soaked up admiration from people who didn't know the truth. Jessica played the role of the queen bee, while Ethan strutted around like a self-made millionaire. It was almost comical. Michael realized that people often build castles out of lies, but those castles crumble when the foundation is exposed. And oh, how satisfying it would be to watch theirs fall apart brick by brick. But Michael wasn't just planning revenge. He was learning. Life has a way of showing you that not everyone deserves access to your blessings. He thought about how easily Jessica had taken his generosity for granted and how Ethan's confidence was built on borrowed luxury. It was a reminder that true wealth isn't in possessions but in character. And when you have both, well, that's when you become unstoppable. The moment came when Michael could no longer hold back. He confronted Jessica at another party, this time with Ethan smugly standing by her side. "So, tell me," Michael began, his voice calm but sharp enough to cut through the noise. "How does it feel to live off someone else's hard work?" Jessica's face paled for a moment before she recovered with a scoff, dismissing him as if he were beneath her. She admitted, without a shred of remorse, that she had used him for his academic brilliance, his money, and even his connections. Ethan chimed in, mocking Michael's supposed lack of ambition, as if he were the king of the world. Michael stood there, unfazed by their words. He realized something profound in that moment. People like Jessica and Ethan thrive on appearances. They build their identities on how others perceive them rather than on who they truly are. Ethan's arrogance was almost laughable here, was a man pretending to be wealthy while leaning on Michael's car. It was like watching a bad play where the actors didn't know the audience was in on the joke. Michael let them talk, knowing that every word only added fuel to the fire he was about to ignite. But here's the thing about confrontation. It's not just about proving a point. It's about reclaiming your power. Michael didn't need their validation anymore. He saw them for what they were, opportunists feeding off others' success. And as he walked away from that conversation, he felt lighter. Sometimes life gives you moments like these not to hurt you, but to remind you of your worth. And when you finally see it, that's when the real story begins. Michael wasn't one to act impulsively, but this time, he knew he had to set things right. Jessica had always bragged about her academic achievements, conveniently forgetting to mention that her most significant work was actually his. She had contributed nothing to the paper they co-authored in name only. Michael had poured his heart and soul into that research, staying up countless nights while she reaped the benefits. So, with a few clicks and a clear conscience, he removed her name from the article. It wasn't revenge, it was justice. The fallout was immediate. Jessica's professors were baffled when they discovered her name missing from the publication, and questions began swirling about her actual contributions. Without that paper, her graduation was suddenly at risk. Michael didn't feel guilty. He felt liberated. It's funny how life works sometimes. People take credit for your work until you take it back. And when you do, they're left scrambling to explain themselves. Jessica's carefully curated FOD was starting to crack. This wasn't just about an academic paper. It was a life lesson in boundaries and self-respect. Michael realized that by letting Jessica take credit for his work, he had been complicit in his own exploitation. But not anymore. Life has a way of teaching you that your efforts are sacred, and no one has the right to steal them. And as Jessica struggled to salvage her reputation, Michael couldn't help but feel a sense of clarity. He was finally reclaiming what was his all along. Michael couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan's arrogance was hiding something far more sinister. The man carried himself like royalty, but his wealth didn't add up. Fueled by curiosity and a need for answers, Michael began digging into Ethan's life. What he found was both shocking and oddly satisfying. Ethan was a fraud, living off the resources of others to sustain his extravagant lifestyle. From unpaid debts to shady business deals, Ethan's entire persona was nothing more than a house of cards waiting to collapse. The deeper Michael dug, the more fascinating the puzzle became. Ethan wasn't just freeloading off Jessica and others. He was connected to a larger network of deceit. Names like Sergio Albuquerque came up, a man infamous for money laundering and financial fraud. It was as if Ethan had taken lessons in manipulation from the best in the business. Michael couldn't help but marvel at how some people invest so much effort into deception when they could channel that energy into building something real. But then again, shortcuts always seem tempting until they lead you to a dead end. This discovery wasn't just about exposing Ethan, it was about understanding how easily people can be fooled by appearances. Michael reflected on how often society rewards style over substance, letting people like Ethan thrive while honest individuals struggle. But here's the thing. Truth has a way of catching up with lies, no matter how well they're hidden. And as Michael pieced together the web of deceit, he knew one thing for sure: Ethan's time was running out, and justice was closer than it seemed. Jessica wasn't one to go down without a fight. When she realized her academic future was at risk, she came crawling back to Michael, not with an apology, but with manipulation. She begged, pleaded, and even threatened him to reinstate her name on the paper. "You'll regret this," she hissed, her tone shifting from desperation to venom. But Michael had seen through her fraud too many times to fall for it again. Her words were like echoes in an empty room, hollow and powerless. Jessica tried every trick in the book, from playing the victim to accusing Michael of being petty. She painted herself as the wronged party, conveniently ignoring the months of betrayal and humiliation she had put him through. It was almost laughable how quickly people like her could rewrite history when their backs were against the wall. But Michael didn't budge. He had learned that standing firm in your decisions isn't cruelty, it's self-respect. And sometimes saying no is the most powerful thing you can do. This chapter of their tangled story wasn't just about Jessica's manipulation. It was about Michael's growth. He realized that people often return to you not because they value you, but because they need something from you. And when you refuse to give it, that's when their true colors shine the brightest. Jessica's threats didn't scare him anymore, they only reinforced his decision to move forward without her. After all, life has a way of clearing out the people who don't belong in your journey, leaving room for those who do. Michael knew it was time to take things up a notch. Ethan had strutted around for too long, basking in a spotlight he didn't deserve. Armed with the evidence he had gathered, Michael decided to expose Ethan for the fraud he truly was. Social media became his stage, and the truth was his weapon. He started posting subtle but damning revelations, unpaid debts, fake business ventures, and the borrowed luxury that Ethan paraded as his own. The reaction was immediate, like a wildfire spreading through dry grass. People who once admired Ethan began questioning his every move. His carefully curated image of success unraveled thread by thread as Michael revealed the truth in ways that couldn't be ignored. The comments flooded in, some shocked, others angry at having been duped. Ethan's credibility crumbled faster than anyone could have imagined. It was a reminder that while lies may travel fast, the truth always catches up, and when it does, it doesn't just knock. It kicks the door down. But this wasn't just about revenge. It was about accountability. Michael reflected on how often society elevates people who are good at pretending rather than those who are genuinely deserving. Ethan's fall from grace wasn't just satisfying, it was a lesson in authenticity. Pretending to be someone you're not might win you applause for a while, but eventually the curtain falls. And when it does, the audience sees everything for what it really is. Michael wasn't done, yet there were still bigger pieces of this puzzle to uncover. As the layers of Ethan's deceit unraveled, Michael found himself standing at the edge of something far more dangerous than he'd anticipated. Ethan wasn't just a small-time fraud. He was a cog in a much larger machine. The name Sergio Albuquerque kept surfacing, a man notorious for running a sprawling criminal network that thrived on money laundering, identity theft, and financial fraud. It was as if Michael had stumbled into the underbelly of a world he hadn't even known existed. The deeper he dug, the more sinister the connections became. Ethan wasn't just living off borrowed wealth. He was helping Sergio funnel dirty money through fake businesses and luxury assets. Michael couldn't help but marvel at how far some people would go to maintain an illusion of power and success. The truth was chilling. Ethan wasn't just a liar. He was an accomplice to crimes that destroyed lives. It made Michael realize how greed can turn people into pawns in someone else's dangerous game. But this discovery wasn't just a revelation, it was a crossroads. Michael knew that exposing Ethan alone wasn't enough anymore. The stakes had shifted, and the game had changed. This wasn't just about personal betrayal or humiliation. It was about justice on a much larger scale. Life has a way of testing your resolve when you least expect it, and Michael understood that his next steps would require courage, strategy, and allies he could trust. The fight was no longer just his, it was for everyone who had been wronged by this web of deceit. Michael knew he was venturing into dangerous territory, but some battles are worth the risk. Exposing Sergio Albuquerque and his criminal empire required more than just determination, it needed proof, the kind that could bring the entire operation crashing down. With the help of a private investigator and a few unexpected allies, Michael devised a daring plan. He would infiltrate Sergio's office, a fortress of secrets, to gather incriminating evidence. It wasn't just bold, it was borderline reckless. But sometimes life demands that you step into the fire to extinguish it. The plan was meticulous. Every detail had to be perfect, from disguises to fake credentials that would get Michael past security. His heart raced as he walked into Sergio's headquarters, each step feeling heavier than the last. The office was a labyrinth of luxury and intimidation, with cameras watching every move. But Michael wasn't deterred. He had come too far to turn back now. As he sifted through files and encrypted drives, he found exactly what he needed: proof of money laundering schemes, fraudulent transactions, and names of accomplices who had helped Sergio build his empire. This wasn't just about exposing a criminal. It was about standing up for something bigger than himself. Michael realized that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. Life often puts us in situations where we must choose between comfort and conviction, and this was one of those moments. As he left Sergio's office with the evidence in hand, Michael felt a surge of purpose. The stakes were higher than ever, but so was his resolve. The next step, bringing this empire of lies to its knees. Michael knew that exposing Sergio Albuquerque required a public spectacle, something so undeniable that even the most corrupt couldn't sweep it under the rug. Armed with the evidence he had painstakingly collected, he orchestrated an ambush with the help of his allies. Journalists, law enforcement, and even whistleblowers who had been victims of Sergio's schemes were all brought into the fold. The plan was set. They would catch Sergio red-handed during one of his clandestine meetings. The day of the ambush was tense. Michael and his team waited in the shadows as Sergio, oblivious to what was unfolding, conducted business as usual in a luxurious private venue. The room buzzed with the arrogance of men who thought they were untouchable. But arrogance often blinds people to reality. As the meeting reached its peak, police officers and journalists stormed in, cameras flashing and accusations flying. Sergio's face shifted from calm confidence to stunned disbelief as he realized the trap he'd walked into. This wasn't just a victory for Michael, it was a triumph for everyone who had been wronged by Sergio's empire. Watching Sergio being led away in handcuffs was a moment Michael would never forget. It was proof that no matter how powerful someone seems, they are not above accountability. Life has a way of balancing the scales, but only if you're willing to stand up and tip them yourself. With Sergio captured, Michael felt a sense of justice, but he also knew that this wasn't the end. There were still consequences to face for everyone involved, and the fallout would be far-reaching. The aftermath of Sergio's capture sent shockwaves through every corner of his criminal network. Like a house of cards, his empire began to collapse as investigators unraveled years of deceit and corruption. Ethan, who had once strutted around like a king, found himself under intense scrutiny. His fraudulent lifestyle was laid bare, and he faced charges that could land him behind bars for years. The man who had mocked Michael now stood exposed, his arrogance reduced to desperation as he scrambled to save himself. Jessica, however, took a different route. Realizing the walls were closing in, she fled the country in search of a fresh start. Her once polished image was now tarnished beyond repair. The academic community had turned its back on her after learning the truth about her reliance on Michael's work. She disappeared into obscurity, leaving behind a trail of burned bridges and shattered relationships. Michael couldn't help but reflect on how quickly people like her crumble when their lies are no longer sustainable. But the fallout didn't stop there. Sergio's other accomplices either faced legal consequences or vanished under mysterious circumstances, likely fearing retribution from those they had wronged. Michael watched it all unfold with a mix of satisfaction and somber reflection. Justice had been served, but it came at a cost. This wasn't just about exposing criminals, it was about understanding the ripple effects of greed and betrayal. Life has a way of teaching us that every action has consequences, and for those who build their lives on deception, those consequences are often swift and unforgiving. Yet, even amidst the chaos, Michael knew there was still one final chapter left to write his own reckoning with everything he had endured. With the dust settling, Michael finally had a moment to breathe. The battle was over, and justice had prevailed, but the victory felt bittersweet. Exposing Sergio's criminal empire and watching Ethan and Jessica face the consequences had brought a sense of closure, yet it had also taken a toll. Michael couldn't ignore the emotional weight of the journey, the sleepless nights, the constant vigilance, and the allies he had lost or distanced along the way. Revenge, he realized, always comes with a price. He thought about the people who had stood by him, some of whom had risked everything to help him bring down Sergio's network. Not all of them had made it through unscathed. A few had disappeared into the chaos, either by choice or circumstance, leaving Michael with unanswered questions and a lingering sense of loss. It was a harsh reminder that even when you win, not all battles leave you whole. Life has a way of teaching you that triumphs often come with sacrifices, and sometimes those sacrifices weigh heavier than expected. As Michael reflected on everything that had happened, he found himself asking deeper questions about justice and revenge. Was it worth it? Had he truly won? Yes, he had exposed lies and reclaimed his dignity, but at what cost? Life isn't always black and white. It's messy, unpredictable, and full of lessons you don't see coming. And yet, through it all, Michael knew one thing for certain. He was stronger now than he'd ever been before. This wasn't just an ending. It was a new beginning, one where he could rebuild, wiser and more resilient than ever. Life is a strange teacher, isn't it? Michael's journey wasn't just about betrayal or revenge. It was a masterclass in resilience, self-worth, and the strength it takes to stand up for what's right. Through every twist and turn, he learned that people will often take advantage of your kindness, but only if you let them. He discovered that true power doesn't come from wealth or status. It comes from knowing your value and refusing to let others define it for you. And most importantly, he realized that justice isn't always easy, but it's always worth pursuing. Now, think about your own life. How often do you let others take credit for your hard work? How many times have you stayed silent when someone crossed a line? Michael's story is a reminder that we all have the power to reclaim what's ours, to stand tall, even when life tries to knock us down. What would you do if you were in his shoes? Would you have the courage to face betrayal head-on, or the strength to walk away from those who don't deserve your loyalty? These are questions worth reflecting on, because they reveal not just who we are, but who we want to become. If this story resonated with you, don't stop here. Life is full of lessons waiting to be uncovered, and every step forward brings you closer to becoming the best version of yourself. Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you never miss another opportunity to grow, learn, and transform your life. Remember, every great journey starts with a single step. What will yours be?